Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome. Now, that does depend on where you are joining us from around the world, because I know we've got guests joining us from the UK, which is where myself, Elvis, and Alan are based today. But I know we've got good friends also joining us from Latvia, where our partnership absolutely extends to for our Latvia Cambridge Venture Camp. But I also know we've got even further afield from China and the Middle East as well. But it doesn't matter. Wherever you're coming from, you are very welcome to join us today. Most of you have already met myself and Alan in the past, but just a quick introduction from me. I am David Bell. I'm the entrepreneur in residence at Anglia Ruskin University here in the UK, but I'm also a business owner and been a business owner for 30 years, hence the grey hair, by the way. Don't let anyone tell you business is easy. It does have tough times at times as well. And we're going to be hearing from our special guest in a little while about their business and about their journey as well. But as always, joined here with my co-host, Professor Alan Barrell. Good morning, or good afternoon as it is now, Alan. Welcome.
Hi, David. And hello, everyone. I'm so pleased to be with you. As you can see, I'm pretty ancient, and I've one big failure to confess with from the beginning. I failed to retire. I haven't found it possible to start working with young people like so many of you. And of course, yes, I was in medicine, I was in business, I was in small companies, large ones, and now I'm working with a lot of entrepreneurs who are starting them up. I'm particularly thrilled to have been working for 10 years with Latvian entrepreneurs, and there's a lot of Latvians, I hope, online today. And some of you will be joining us in August for our annual rave up here and our venture camp in Cambridge. And it's particularly a pleasure for me to be able to introduce someone who I know quite well. Elvis, I think I know your mum too, Elvis. His mother is a very high-ranking academic in the Riga Technical University. But these venture camps have been going for 10 years, and these webinars are in a way started as a supplement to the venture camps, because we really want to encourage young people to take the plunge, to take big steps forward, to live the dream, as it were. Let the tsunami take you to wherever it might take you from time to time when the call to adventure gets into your mind. And you're going to hear a wonderful story today, a story about transition, because Elvis started off in Latvia. He came here. He's moved from one discipline to another. He's also got a very nice family, I know. And I think if you really want to make the most of all of this, relax and ensure that you can ask questions if you want to participate. This is not a lecture. This is a real looking into someone's life journey and how they've made something very special of themselves and how the challenges have had to be overcome. So, I don't think it's for me to go on rabbiting here, David. It's we've got a wonderful guest with us who I haven't seen for a while. I saw him recently at the last venture camp where he told us this wonderful story. So Elvis, why don't you take over for a bit and introduce yourself in your own way, and we'll see where we go from there.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. As always, Alan, you're painting, I think, a picture that is maybe a bit more beautiful than reality, but I appreciate the fantastic intro. Thank you so much. Yeah, maybe we can see where the conversation takes us. I'll just do a very quick intro. I'm Elvis. I'm originally from Latvia. I'm a mathematician by training. I wanted to be a professor, and after I finished my PhD, I wasn't sure which lab to join. And I needed a bit of money, so I joined a Cambridge startup, and then I spent around 10 years in the startup industry in Cambridge, and moved from discipline to discipline, really from fintech to kind of general AI to biotech to kind of entertainment industry. So yeah, worked on a bunch of different exciting projects, and maybe we can explore some of them in the conversation later today.
Yeah,
I'd love to explore. You're very modest too. I mean, you do have a PhD in maths, don't you?
Yes, that is correct. Yeah, I mean, I love maths.
I mean, a little bit more you might want to say first startup that you were involved in? Because it was a very pivotal, iconic startup, wasn't it? Really, it was at the time when the internet started to do a lot of stuff with online finance, and you were in a way a pioneer of crowdfunding, weren't you?
Yeah, it was a really, really exciting startup. I remember when I saw the job ad come up, I was like, oh, hey, this is the sort of business that, at the time I was still thinking I'll take like a year off, earn a bit of money, and then join a postdoc lab. And it's like, hey, it would be fun to work on something like this for a year. And the idea was quite simple. It was that back in the day, so this was 2014, summer of 2014.
Yeah.
Crowd finance was becoming more and more popular. So people knew places like Indiegogo, Kickstarter, where you could kind of come up with new kind of product ideas and see whether there's interest and gain some kind of early investment in it, just purely through sales of goods. There were also loads of other platforms at the time that dealt in they sold debt, so kind of crowd finance debt to like developing countries or developed countries as well. US was one of the biggest places in the world at the time for that, and also even just equity in startups. So Crowdcube, I think, is still around. It's a very well respected platform in Cambridge. Syndicate Room, I'm fairly certain that they're still around.
Yeah, they're still around. They're still around.
So all of this was kind of on a sort of an exponential trajectory at the time, and the idea for the business was very, very simple. It was kind of an idea by analogy from kind of, I think it was 1970s when the US stock exchanges and places like that were getting digitized, and all of a sudden bankers were seeing kind of competitive advantage in having the information at their disposal faster than anyone else. And a few businesses came out of this, kind of fairly well-known businesses like Bloomberg and Thomson Reuters. And that was kind of the pitch of the business. We're going to be the Bloomberg of the crowd finance economy. So it was hugely exciting at the time.
Yeah, I mean, you became actually, for a period of time, the one and only properly organized company providing structured and validated data about what was going on in the industry. That was the business, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. So I was responsible for data ingestion in that company, and yeah, I remember at the heyday we were processing hundreds of thousands of new transactions every night from I think it was over 1,000 different platforms. So like your Indiegogo times 1,000. So it was quite a big and quite a sophisticated data operation, and it was. There was no standardization, so we had to invest quite heavily in making sure that we can do all this data gathering in a cost efficient manner. And yeah, we worked with a lot of really interesting companies, including Thomson Reuters. We ran a project with them as well and tried to commercialize this idea and find where it could be most valuable.
It was a very interesting time, and at the same time, I was working with a group of people at the Judge Business School who was starting the Center for Alternative Finance. You'll remember that. Yeah, Brian Chang and all those guys. And some of the people I was with last week at the Judge were looking into that kind of activity. And it was a purple patch of intellectual forward movement. And then kind of it sort of petered out, didn't it, Elvis, in a way? It's still going, crowdfunding, but it became day to day. It was, first of all, highly innovative, and then it was, well, everybody's doing it. The Chinese got into it in a huge way, in a very big way. And so when you completed that, did you just exit that, or you found something different to do?
Yeah, it was kind of, I think one of the challenges at the time was that we were kind of, we raised capital on kind of like a venture capital trajectory. So you're kind of expecting exponential growth. And what we saw at some point, there were some players who were implicated in sort of slightly subpar business practices. And there were loads of good players, but kind of industry as a whole took a hit, and kind of the exponential growth turned into linear growth, healthy linear growth, but it was becoming increasingly difficult to raise capital and keep funding the startup business. So we kind of the business was actually parceled up and sold on to a new conglomerate that were trying to kind of take it in a slightly more focused, in a slightly smaller direction. And a bunch of kind of us originals, we sort of negotiated our exits as part of that. So yeah, and that was a really interesting time. I remember at the time thinking what would be kind of an obvious next move, and I really wanted to get kind of closer into sort of machine learning, AI stuff. So it was really starting to, I don't know if really taking over the world is the right term. I think this was still the days of pre-ChatGPT, but it was definitely kind of, especially in the industry, in the know, there was a lot of buzz around kind of vision models of the time. There was really, really fast growth and a lot of excitement. And so I knew that I wanted to kind of get closer to those sort of areas. And there was a really interesting startup in Cambridge at the time called, at the time they were called Prowler.io. Now they've rebranded to Second Mind, still going. Really cool company. And it was essentially the brainchild of Carl Rasmussen. I don't know if you know Carl, Alan. He's in the engineering department.
No, yeah.
Yeah, so he's a very, very well known professor of machine learning, one of the granddaddies, kind of maybe granddaddy.
We're all
maybe
granddaddies.
old enough to warrant that term, but he's a very, very impressive publication and sort of impact record. And he was spinning out a startup out of his lab, and they were kind of at a really exciting time. And so that's the company I joined after Crowdsurfer.
And how long was that? How long did all that go on for?
So Crowdsurfer, the crowd finance business, was, I think that was roughly three and a half years, and then after that I joined Second Mind.
Yeah.
So,
and you were there for some time. AI.
Yeah, so I was going to just say, so you mentioned AI. I don't think there's a meeting that people don't go to today where AI comes up as part of the conversation. I think most meetings, regardless of what it is, in business, probably in personal, over a cup of tea or a coffee or maybe something stronger, we're all talking about this hot potato subject now, artificial intelligence. But as you've just alluded to, most people know AI really in the context of what it is today because of the likes of ChatGPT. A few years ago, it surfaced, and now everybody's kind of got an understanding of what that can do. But you mentioned you were utilizing, or part of the business you was involved with were already looking at these tools that were available. So let's just talk a little bit more about AI from where you first kind of got involved. And we'll talk about a little bit more about where it is and where it's going to. Who knows? No crystal balls or magic wands. But just a little bit more about that role that you played in that artificial intelligence space and this advanced vision models and stuff like that as well.
Yeah, I mean, AI is a huge area. I think the sort of the vision models are something that we work on currently. I think they're really exciting, but they're also relatively recent. I think kind of the foundational model paper really is only 4 years old. I was doing a literature review just the other week, and the progress on various vision tasks has been crazy. Overall, I think machine learning has been on everyone's radars for at least 10, 11 years. That's when it kind of really revolutionized vision tasks with ImageNet. All of a sudden, computers could categorize cats and dogs better than humans, and then became kind of a really important tool in all kind of the modern digital experiences. You see YouTube, TikTok, like they're all using flavors of these models for various parts of the product offering. We started dabbling with ML even in my first startup. It was very clear that it's going to be a big thing, and kind of the real question was, okay, so out of all this sort of wild west of what's possible, like what do we because nothing's free, right? If you want to explore an idea that's going to take a few months to implement, to test with users, to figure out, oh, hey, does this land with the marketplace or not? And so you have to be very careful about what you try to attack with these techniques and stuff like that. But yeah, we kind of started early, and I think that's been kind of a really interesting evolution of machine learning. Whilst it's been a field for decades, I think it's undergone a huge explosion in tasks that it can successfully tackle easily. Just over the last 3 years, I think like ChatGPT and the like have really, really revolutionized and made it much easier to just solve almost any task to do with any sort of language understanding, visual understanding. They're really, really impressive. A lot of the challenges these days are around, okay, can you make it cost efficient? Can you deal with hallucinations and stuff like that? But
Yeah,
we'll
get on a little bit later to your interest in life science and bioscience, but in that field in particular, when you talk about machine learning, it's all 7 or 8 years ago, I met a young lady in Barcelona who was a PhD in bioinformatics. And she came over here and started a company which is now valued at 300 million. But what I think people don't often appreciate is that the massive growth in our knowledge of genomics and genetics and our amazing ability to sequence data at such a speed that the older kinds of information systems couldn't cope with it. And if we hadn't had machine learning, bioinformatics would not have developed the way it has. And companies like LifeBit, the one bioinformatics I mentioned, stepped in and saw the opportunity and really revolutionized the whole field of bioinformatics and made genetics and genomics and all kinds of omics much more possible. And you started to get interested in life sciences, didn't you? Or you may have already been interested.
Yeah, it was. So life sciences was an interesting thing. So that was my jump after Second Mind, and that was really motivated by the fact that I was kind of looking around Cambridge and thinking, what are the really sort of cutting edge companies? I knew by that point that I wanted to work on really exciting products and kind of try and bring something really exciting, really new to life. And it kind of was fairly obvious to me that life sciences is one of the kind of areas of excellence. So that's something where I think Cambridge really, really excels in, and you can see that in various metrics. There's a reason why AstraZeneca, one of their global headquarters, is in Cambridge, and just the amount of funding and the amount of impressive companies is really, really interesting, and really, really it's a powerful signal. And it was when was it? This was 2021 when a really exciting new startup caught my eye. It was called BIOS Health, still going, and they had this really amazing idea to me. They were developing these brain-computer interfaces. So essentially small implantables that you can sort of slap onto your peripheral nerves to listen in on the communications between your brain and various organs, and also introducing electrical signals via these pads to kind of just change the way organs, to essentially kind of trick the brain into thinking that the organs are doing slightly different things for kind of therapeutic effects. And it was really, really, it seemed like a fantastic opportunity, because this is something that's super exciting and has the potential for changing lives, right? Because we were exploring things like treating heart failure and other really, really interesting and complicated disease areas. Huge amounts of data. This, I'm not a biology person, I'm a mathematician, right? So the only way I can really get involved is if there's some sort of modeling to be done, and that typically means there needs to be data. And third, as I said, this is, life sciences in Cambridge, I think, is kind of a special combination. So it kind of ticked all these boxes, and that's a startup that I spent another 3 years at, and we did yeah, a bunch of really interesting things, and kind of yeah, there's a lot of exciting AI applications. There's a lot of very complicated data gathering. One of the things that I'd say that is surprisingly difficult though in life sciences is still this data access. So even though we gather more data than ever before, I think the regulatory frameworks are still somewhat underdeveloped. And if you're, let's say, trying to even for genetics, Alan, like it's one of the kind of success stories in AI and biology. There's still, I'd say, the area is surprisingly fragmented, and if you're trying to get your hands on a lot of genomic data, it's scattered across a lot of different databases. It's difficult to reconcile, and there's a lot of businesses that are built just on top of this idea that you have to kind of make it easy to access this data from a vast number of sources. I still think there's an opportunity for maybe at an NHS level or yeah, maybe US equivalent level, National Institutes of Health, to kind of streamline that access and make it even easier for people to try out ideas. Because yeah, currently it feels like there's still a bit of a blocker where you need to kind of own your data gathering or buy expensive databases before you can build exciting kind of just intellectual property ideas on top of it that are based just on data. It's
still evolving, still evolving. So that you were there in that particular company for 3 years, and by that time, of course, you had a family, didn't you, Elvis? I mean, we mustn't overlook the family stuff.
Yeah, family, responsibilities, mortgages, lack of sleep. It's all fun. Yeah.
And that's what life's about. You're busy working and building and creating something amazing in your business world, but of course you're doing the same in your personal life as well. You're busy building and creating something, amazing there as well. And I'm sure there's a number of people watching this. The question I often get asked: how do you balance out that personal side? The things that you want to keep personal, your family, your relationship, your children, versus your business side. So just coming away from the kind of the day-to-day business activities, how do you find that balance? How do you, what I do might be different to you, but how do you balance out the two?
Yeah, that's a good question. Sometimes badly. But I mean, the sort of the pledge that I've sort of made to my kids is that they come first, and really and it's just, I always think about it, being a dad is kind of, it's one of those special life journeys. I feel like there's a bunch of different journeys that you undertake, and like doing a PhD and going super deep into an area, I think it's one of those special life journeys. And similarly, working at startups, I find that's like a different but very exciting, very, very lovely life journey. And I feel like kids is similar. And so like, I don't want to sort of do it badly. It would be a shame if I kind of 10 years later, I'm like, oh, hey, I missed my kids because I was too busy doing this and that. So I kind of, that's one of those things that I've made a very kind of conscious choice. And I'm just being very upfront about it with people I work with, and I just tell them, look, this is my priority, and I will prioritize my kids over everything else. But I am still highly motivated. Whenever I'm on work time, I'm work time and I'm going 100 miles an hour, and there's just it. If you communicate, I find that it tends to not be a problem, and actually it kind of opens interesting conversations. And my bosses have been very, very understanding, and it's just not been a problem so far.
And you now have you assumed progressively more responsibility beyond doing the maths and all the stuff. I mean, you are a senior executive in your company now, aren't you?
Well, I was at my previous startup. I was leading the whole machine learning function, which was a lot of responsibility, and yeah, quite far away from just doing kind of the day-to-day nitty-gritty. Currently, I'm in a larger company, so there I no longer lead a function. So it's kind of, in some ways, it's been somewhat easier, because the technical expectations are a little bit higher, but kind of the responsibility right now is a little bit lower than my previous place, which right now is a good balance, but I think it's likely to change in the future as well.
But there's still a lot of stimulus for entrepreneurial thinking in the work you do, isn't there?
Yeah. It's always been very, very important to me to be in a place where you can have your own agency and sort of try to innovate. And I've realized that just really motivates me. I want to bring kind of new experiences, new products into the market, try and build something new and exciting. And so yeah, my role selection is always very, very careful in that regard. And I want to make sure I'm in a company where you can do that, and kind of you have a lot of agency, and initiative is rewarded, and you're judged by your outputs, not just by, sitting at your desk and stuff like that. So yeah.
Let's just talk a little bit about, look, a mathematician. I'm not even going to try to have a numbers game with you because you'll outstrip me by a long shot. But using your skills, your knowledge, and now bringing AI into play, an area which, as I say, is a hot topic spoken about daily. What type of tools? So applications, what ChatGPT being one of many. What type of things are you using in your day-to-day life? And that could be business and personal. Give us a flavor of the things that you're doing with AI to help move your ideas, move the business forwards.
Yeah, great question. This is, I think it's a sign of the times that I think the answer to this question will change week on week. So I've set up various I've subscribed to a bunch of newsletters that I really respect, and they kind of keep pushing new products to me. And there's kind of almost too many of them to try out all of them. But maybe I'll give you a few highlights from recent interactions, and just bear in mind that the answer next week will be very, very different. But I mean, kind of the obvious things are ChatGPT, and in fact, I slightly prefer a different company called Anthropic. They're also, I think, California-based. They made this product line of models entitled Claude, and they're really, really great for kind of coding technical tasks. So I've kind of integrated that quite heavily in my workflows, both via kind of a web browser, but also just directly at my tools. So I like to spend a bit of time to make sure that the integrations are there so that it's at my fingertips. So I use a specific note-taking software, and I've set up Claude to just give me suggestions on any sort of, hey, summarize this better, or like, give me a pre-read on this topic. What should I go deeper on? What shouldn't I go deeper on this? So that's one of those things. I think the thing that excites me much more, though, long term, is where these tools gain more autonomy, and maybe not so much with executing things on my behalf. I find that still to be hit and miss, but gathering information and doing not just kind of one query, but sort of searching the internet, getting some responses, maybe searching some other databases, collating those answers to provide kind of a summary for me. I find that to be really, really exciting. So one of the things that I have to do quite often is do kind of literature reviews on, let's say we have an idea for a product, and now we want to understand what's the state of the art, what are some papers, what are some products, and how do they compare? And typically in the past, you could have spent, easily weeks on these sort of tasks. And just the other week, I tried a new tool. I can't remember what it's called now. I'm really sorry. I'll try and look up the link later afterwards. But the premise is really, really interesting. They once you enter in your search query. So in that particular instance, it was to do with a specific vision task, and I was like, okay, so what is the state of the possible, and what are some of the seminal papers in this area? And this tool listed 50 different papers that have had like really good publication records, so like a lot of citations and stuff like that. And then it out of my query, where I was like, okay, so I'm interested in this specific way, this specific subtask, and this specific non-task. It then ran those subqueries in each of those papers. So it pulled up a paper, and then it checked, oh, hey, does it match this requirement? Does it match this requirement? And do we specifically not mention this? Because I know you're not interested in this specific bit. And then it just provided at the end a table where it's like, okay, so here's a priority list. These papers at the top tick this, this, this. This is how many citations they've got, and then X's and ticks. And at the end, I had a really well-researched top 10 reading list for papers that could have taken me weeks. And in this case, I only had to think through the question, hit go, and it, like a few hours later, it gave me a really, really great literature review. And I remember being really, really impressed with the thoroughness, and it just saved me a lot of time, which that sort of stuff really gets me excited about the future of AI, where it can take away these boring tasks.
That sounds like, and I might be wrong here, because there's lots of, as you say, an app today will be different tomorrow. The AI tools are changing regularly. But that one you're describing sounds a little bit like SciSpace, scispace.com. If you haven't looked at that one, I think you'll find that really interesting as well. It is designed, SciSpace, I can pop it in the chat for all our guests here, but it's designed more around that whole research. So it's about picking up research papers and really kind of going into high detail and high depth. So I'll pop that into the chat for everybody to maybe have a look at that have got an interest in that. But it's a really good tool. I say really drills down into the detail. But there's so many great, tools out there to use. Alan, look, older generation. I'm going to just throw this to Alan actually, and then Alan can pick up on the next question for you, always. But I'm going to try and say what Alan's 65. I know it's a little bit older than that, but are you using AI? Have you started to think about those?
I'm just starting to use. Well, I'm starting to use it, and I'll tell you what stimulated me as much as anything else. I've been doing a lot of work lately with, alongside the professor of education in University of Cambridge, Professor Rupert Wegerif. He is he's a man devoted to his belief in the importance of dialogic learning by discussing and so on. And I didn't get involved sufficiently in AI at all. And then he has repeatedly said to me, do you know what? I have a discussion, he said to me and to other people. Every day I have my own discussion with ChatGPT. I have a dialogue. I ask questions and I get answers and I argue. And I've started to do that now. It's a way of, and one thing, remember, David, you and I, last year, we were asked to do a course on leadership for 50, 16-year-old Chinese school children. And my Chinese friend, Clark Liu, said, would we help him with this? And he went to ChatGPT and he asked for a 1-week program, a 5-day program on leadership. And what came out was so close to what we did that I then became convinced that I better start looking at this in my own rather juvenile, aging way. So in that sense, yes. I mean, I would use it in a practical sense now. I want to have a discussion with it. I want to get answers. I want to get things quicker. Yes, and I might want to do a very rapid search of something, which I know I can do very, very quickly. So I've actually come to trust that particular system. I'm not as ingrained as you are, David, with all the other things you talk about, but I'm going to have to get into it more. And in fact, I was over breakfast this morning with my wife saying we really have to get more into this in order that we can ensure that we keep pace with the knowledge that will be useful to us, So yes, I'm being dragged in, but I was being dragged in. I'm now being forcibly moved in, but I'm there. I'm getting there. Of course, I've got 8 grandchildren, and they're all deeply into it. They know more about stuff than I shall ever learn. But so the younger generation is very stimulating.
Yeah, that's the thing. The younger generation would better tell us how to utilize it. As Elvis said, it's changing daily, certainly weekly, but every day. Like you, Elvis, I've signed up on many different good quality, informative newsletters about the new tools. And there's too many. You know, I try to, that one looks good, I'll jump on, have a look. That the downside to all of these, that there's lots of free options. You know, you can try it for free, but they all come with a cost. And if I was to sign up for everything I like the look of, I'll be spending hundreds of pounds every week on just utilizing these tools. But I suppose that is one of the prices we pay to have these tools at our fingertips. So, Elvis, without keep going down the AI route, and thank you for sharing, you know, some of the things that you're using it for. But you talk here, I mean, we've branded this beyond the algorithm. And I think that's quite an important title for this particular conversation we're having. Because, you know, in the past, we used to use algorithms to make decisions, and that still does happen today. If you're planning a route, you know, maybe a delivery route, the algorithm is going to be far better at deciding the delivery path of Tesco's delivering their, you know, deliveries to each house than using AI, because AI has to go off and probably makes many more calculations. This is where I'm not going to get involved in the mathematics, because you're going to outsmart me by 10 to 1, if not 100 to 1. But the difference between an algorithm from your perspective and now using AI, is there a place for both? You know, will we be using AI a lot more to do these calculations? Are they as good at calculating as a human? Because I can look at a map and see 20 points on a map and say, if I was going to draw a line and connect all of those, I'd go in this route. But AI would see it very differently, but an algorithm would be based on distance and time it takes to get there and potential traffic and stuff like that. Just how are we using these tools successfully?
Yeah, good question. I think that's possibly one of the big challenges with AI right now, is to figure out where it really works and where it doesn't. I mean, especially with ChatGPT these days, you know, it's really great when it gives you the correct answers, but sometimes, as everyone knows, they hallucinate, right? And sort of you have to be very careful about using that information then without extra oversight and anything like that. So yeah, it's difficult. I don't know what the answer is, to be honest. It's our typical approach professionally is, if it matters enough that you want to use some sort of a ChatGPT or, you know, any sort of AI solution, you need to figure out how to tell whether it's good or not. You know, like in a way where you don't just give it to your users, because, you know, let's say, oh, you roll out a feature and it's powered by, I don't know, ChatGPT on the back end, but, you know, ChatGPT gets version updates and stuff might change. You know, you don't control it. So you don't really want to be alerted to a regression in a user experience when users are knocking on your door and threatening to burn your workshop, right? So kind of our general approach has been to sort of make sure that you have ways of evaluating, defining what good looks like, and having a way of check what good looks like against this ChatGPT, maybe this Claude or some other versions, to figure out, like, first of all, which one's the best, and what are maybe some of the risks. What you see a lot of these kind of big AI companies do is they have these content moderation filters. So whenever the AI returns a response, it goes through this extra layer and it checks, oh, hey, is there anything, you know, are you enforcing racial biases, or are you telling people how to build a nuclear bomb and stuff like that? So it's really interesting how the industry is adapting to some of these challenges.
If you talk to some of my very good friends, I'm only 5 minutes away from Addenbrooke's Hospital. Now, I've got a good friend who is a consultant in intensive care. He doesn't know too much about mathematics or AI, but what he does know is that using genetics, if you've got a patient who has a lung infection, you can absolutely rapidly find out what the species of bug is and what the sensitivity to antibiotics is. Whereas previously you had to take a sample, send it to the lab, they'd grow the bugs and so on and so forth. But in finding what you need to know, there's an enormous amount of data that gets generated. And there are not so much large AI companies, but there are very specialized ones that have algorithms that can get that data and handle it. And within 2 or 3 hours, they can get something to the doctor that he understands. Because doctors don't want to see masses of data while they're sitting beside a patient that might be dying from lung disease. They want a very clear indication of what they need to do. And I don't know exactly how it does it, but there definitely are companies that can actually bring that to pass by the use of artificial intelligence in very, very special ways with medical data. I mean, that is a revolution because it means we can handle sepsis in a much more effective way than we ever might have done before. And that's just the beginning, really. It's all moving very, very rapidly forward.
Yeah,
and I cannot understand the thing. My consultant friend says, he can't. He knows the companies to use and he knows how to get it done. But obviously, he's a clinician. He's looking at the patient. So it's very interesting how it's if we use it as a tool in appropriate ways, it will be amazingly beneficial, I think, for all of us. I was at a conference last week where they were saying, we're asking a question: will the evolution of AI lead to extreme changes in educational institutions? Will we need schools and universities? Well, they'll have to change, won't they? They're not going to be the same as they used to be. So it is world moving, and it's very interesting to imagine how someone else asked a question. Sorry, go on.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna just jump onto that point. I think it's super exciting. I mean, AI and just computers in general are really great at these sort of needle in a haystack problem, right? And like sequencing the DNA of this mosquito and then cross-referencing it against a database of known treatments, genetically profiled, and then to find the right drug. That's exactly the sort of stuff that they will be awesome at, and humans will struggle. Like DNA is famously very, very data intensive, so quite difficult for humans to really make sense of that. And I think that's kind of a sign of a really good application of AI, where you even forget about any sort of algorithms powering it, etc. You're just focused on, oh, hey, wow, this was a really awesome outcome. And it's kind of, I find it super powerful as well, especially when it's kind of helping with outcomes that are so easily and clearly measurable as like you saved a life or treated a condition. I think it's really, really, really cool. I'm really excited about it. I don't know if you've heard of a company called Isomorphic Labs. They're one company out of many that do very, very similar things. It's a DeepMind spin out that essentially does protein modeling, and it's again one of those. I think it's an area to watch because sort of a lot of chemical and mechanical properties of various chemical agents and DNA and the biochemistry that makes up the human body and interventions. A lot of that is determined by kind of the shape of the molecules, and it's a famously difficult field. It's very difficult to model these things, but there's been some really, really amazing breakthroughs over the last few years. I'm sure you've heard of AlphaFold and the subsequent Nobel Prize, which I thought was just incredible. For a Nobel Prize in chemistry to go to someone from a computer science background, I think that's kind of it's very, very special, and just speaks to the achievement of these folks. And a hugely exciting area, and I can't wait to see what comes out of those labs and what sort of real world impact they have.
The stuff you're talking about now will be of very great interest to 2 or 3 of the people that were in my session last week at the Judge Business School, who were asking me, well, we are thinking about moving into some kind of career, probably an entrepreneurial career in life sciences, but we're not really sure where to go with it and what to do with it. I mean, you've moved into life sciences, and it's now very important to you, isn't it, Elvis? You were a sort of pure mathematician, but you've developed almost a sort of an emotional feeling about the need for the kind of work that happens in the life science sector.
Yeah, I mean, I have to be I've since moved away from biosciences. So for 6 months, I've been at a new company, and we're kind of working on vision AI. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I think life sciences is kind of special in many ways because I remember it makes it super easy to get up out of bed. Like there's various motivations in life, and everyone's different in this regard. But just knowing that you're maybe trying to help treat someone's condition, I find it super, super. It was really it was really putting a spring in my step when I was still working in bioinformatics, and I would really, really recommend it to anyone. It is a wonderful area, and I find it's yeah, that extra added motivation really helps, and I find it really
Going on, changing tack a little bit. I mean,
yeah.
And there may be some questions, but Elvis, we've had such a wonderful, positive discussion. I mean, you want to say anything about the challenges, or were there moments of difficulty or doubt, or tell us a bit about some of
A lot of, I mean, how long have you got? There's, if you work in startups, I think challenges are a given. And it can maybe, yeah, it can be overwhelming. I mean, it's you pour your efforts into something, and maybe you don't see the market validation that you want, and that can be really, really demoralizing. Maybe you've had a investor come along, and you've had a chat, and you thought, oh hey, I'm showing you this world leading stuff, and you're just not interested, or maybe you kind of missed the point and stuff. And these things can all be very, very demoralizing. I think but I think maybe you just, the only advice I'd give to people on this is to just, as long as you try hard and you're sort of honest in what you're trying to achieve and how you're trying to make sense of the world, you could be wrong as well, and that's okay as well, right? Like all you can control is whether you try hard and you try to put your best foot forward and try to solve the important problems. And maybe you're wrong, and I've been wrong a number of times, and it's that's, I don't know. In many ways it's enjoyable, right? And it's kind of, it's a story to tell, and it's fun, and it's something to reflect on. And I think a lot of the challenges you can actually turn into kind of learning experiences, and in many ways having a lot of challenges is also a privilege. There's a lot of demanding customers. Well, why are they demanding? Because they really see the value in the stuff that you're bringing, and they want to kind of just maximize on it. So yeah, I think, yeah, that's the only thing I'd say about challenges. There's a lot of them, and they will be different to each person and each area. But I think it's also kind of a wonderfully interesting experience, and you can get a lot out of it. And yeah.
And you're still a very young man. So, what's the vision? Where do you want your life to take you, or where do you want to take your life? Is there a big vision there?
No big vision. I have my principles for life are fairly simple. I just want to work on really interesting stuff and work on exciting projects. If I could have, if I could retire and look back to a life where I've made one technology or a product that's changed a few lives, I think I'd be very, very happy. I think it's also very, very difficult. It is not easy to have impact. So I kind of just want to work on wonderful, exciting, interesting problems. I think that's what really drives me. And I wish I could say that there's a big plan, and I'm gonna win this award next year and this award the year after. But there's just none of that. I'm very simple in that regard. I just want to find interesting problems.
You're looking to make a difference. That comes across very passionately. If you can inspire or bring something to the surface that changes the world one little bit at a time, that is what you're looking for. As we sort of come to the top of the hour, and very shortly, as we sadly will be saying goodbye, and thank you for your time. But we still have some time left on the clock yet. It's ticking away fast. Just give us a little bit more of a insight to this new role that you are now involved with, which is this advanced vision models. Let's just imagine no one knows what that really means. Some will, of course, but just break that down. What is that? How is it being utilized in today's world? And where do you see that going in the future as well?
Right. So vision models, the way I think about them is, well, actually, they're kind of around us already. So ChatGPT is secretly a vision model already. They've kind of made a silent switch at some point. But the way I think about it is, if you think about large language models, they kind of came along and changed the game in terms of how we can write, how we kind of produce written text and how we summarize written text and interact with any aspect of it. Similarly, vision language models are kind of bringing that sort of understanding about visual scenes. So it could be a movie, it could be a video clip, it could be like a security camera. It's about kind of understanding really what's going on. And instead of having kind of very rudimentary understanding, you're giving users exactly the stuff that they were interested in. Oh, hey, alert me about only when the hob has been left on after I left the home in your security camera, or hey, find all these movies that kind of match this very, very specific interest, and really dive into it beyond just kind of simple categories of like comedy and actors and stuff like that. So I think that's that's kind of vision language models in a nutshell, and you're actually seeing them silently take over all these big AI companies. I think it's difficult to maybe sell these things because the space is so saturated with innovation. I think they haven't really made a huge splash about it, but every now and then when they make a bigger leap, you see a big release. I think Google, I think it was just last week where they unveiled their new movie generation model, and it was a real step up. It's kind of scary to think how, I think we only really started talking about video generation really like 2-3 years ago, and now it's kind of approaching sort of really usable state. I think it's really amazing.
We're talking full box office films will be purely AI generated. No actors, no actresses. Everything will be kind of fed in, and out comes your next motion picture, which can be exciting in one way. But is it? Here's the question, Elvis: would you watch a film that is 100% AI produced from start to finish, knowing that? I mean, maybe you'd watch it, but would you enjoy it? I don't know. It'd be interesting to see what it looks like, I suppose, is the question.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of really interesting challenges, like all these ethical challenges around, hey, are we making a lot of actors jobless and stuff like that? Yeah, this is something that we're going to have to navigate for sure. I mean, the way I think about it, though, is we have undergone a bunch of huge sort of paradigm shifts and like just employment shifts throughout history, right? Like if you think back to pre-industrial revolution, more than 60% of the workforce was out on the fields. People aren't really missing those jobs that much. Similarly, computer used to be a job role. If you remember back in the day, people had these jobs where they had to add up a bunch of numbers, and I'm sure a lot of them liked it. But overall, as computers took over those jobs, I think the world's changed for the better. And I suspect that we will still figure out and reshuffle, and people will just use tools to be more to have bigger impact, and each person will have bigger impact. And I'm actually quietly very, very excited about the future where people can maybe just work on the things that are really, really interesting to them and sort of leverage AI to do maybe some of the more boring bits. And by the way, I think with movies, I don't think blockbusters are going away. I think everything I've seen suggests to me that humans are much, much better still at kind of coming up with good scripts and having the scenes that really maximize the impact. But I think AI in video generation specifically, what it's really good at is generating maybe something that would have been a nice side story for maybe an informational YouTube video. Maybe teachers in the future will have these like hyper-tailored videos in classroom to illustrate a concept, but by bringing in like something that's happening in the school, or by tailoring it to the interests of the kids. I suspect we'll see a lot more of that, where like the super high quality finish isn't really necessary. And I think that's going to be really, really exciting. Schools might really change and become like these little mini entertainment industries to really land with the kids. I don't know. We'll see. The world will tell us, but there's definitely a lot of exciting stuff to come, and can't wait.
Yeah, super exciting. I'm going to be quiet at this point, where we've got literally a few minutes to go before we have to wrap up and finish. I'm going to hand over to Professor Alan Barrell for our final wrap-up question for you, Elvijs. I'm not quite sure what he's going to throw at you, but hopefully it'll be one to kind of put on the mantelpiece and be remembered. So over to you, Alan, for our final question.
I think, Elvijs, it's always fascinating to talk to you. I just wondered, in the last fragments of time we've got left, you might like to say something special to your colleagues from, or previous colleagues, or your compatriots from Latvia, for whom we put this webinar together in the first place. You came to the UK. I mean, presumably you're happy you came to Cambridge, but what about the entrepreneurs sitting in Latvia listening, and any special advice to them, or words of wisdom, or something you'd like to say to encourage them to be entrepreneurial for the future? Whatever you want to say to them.
Yeah, I think it's a really, you should do it if you want to make a big change in the world. I think it's highly exciting. The one kind of maybe word of advice that I'd leave is, and this is just from my personal experiences, I think obsessing about users is something that we don't really do enough of. There's a lot of I think it's quite easy to fall into various technical traps and think about this theory or this maths and that maths, and what every single product launch or every single feature that I've been involved in comes back to is you really, really need to understand your users, and it will differ from area to area. It's very different if you're trying to treat heart failure to whether you're trying to bring some video understanding or etc. But you will make a bunch of assumptions and you will be wrong about all of them. And you just have to be really, really humble and ask users, hey, what is your real problem like? And then just be honest and solve that real problem, and try to attack real validated user problems as opposed to ones that you've made up in a thought experiment.
Yeah, you're reminding me of some of the words of Einstein. I mean, I always quote Einstein: imagination is more important than knowledge, he said. But he also said we should learn from the past, we should live for the present, and we should hope for the future. But we should never stop asking the questions. And I think that's part of your message, isn't it?
Yeah.
We keep questioning what it is we are and why we are in our own minds, and what we might do next. If we're, in my view, as I said to the guys in the Judge Business School last week, entrepreneurial thinking is much more than starting companies and making money. Entrepreneurial behavior changes the world. Marie Curie was an entrepreneur, and many, many people that never started a business are entrepreneurial thinkers. So the age of entrepreneurship ought to give us even more and more exciting ways in which we can think of using stuff like AI. So we've got tools at our disposal that we never believed or imagined we would ever have. And by the way, we are continuing. David was in Riga recently, so we're We're still working hard to support the Latvian entrepreneurial community, and we want to go on doing so. And I'm sure you'll be around, Elvis, and you will be invited in August, as you were last time, to come and meet the group that we have in the summer here later on. And some of them, I'm sure, are online today. So it's been great. And you heard that advice, all you entrepreneurs out there? Yeah. Keep your minds open. Keep thinking ahead. Never stop asking the question.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Alan. Thank you very much, Elvis, for joining us and being our special guest today. We've had a few comments coming in, people watching. Elmar, thank you. Elvis, Alan, and David. Dimitri's put here, thank you very much. It's good to hear that people are joining us watching and viewing. This is available on Catch Up. So if you've missed any part of today's talk here with Elvis, you can rewind and watch it all again and pick out your favorite moments. It leaves me to wish you a great afternoon or evening, wherever you are around the world. Thank you again, Elvis. As always, Alan, an absolute pleasure to have you by my side. And we'll see you next month for another fantastic interview with one of our special guests.
And thank you, David, for the broadcast and the studio, and you, Elvis. Thank you, everyone. Bye now.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Cheers.
folks.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.